Very much. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for any questions he cares to put to the panel.
Thank the chairman. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Ranking Member, for being here today, for testifying on the bill before us. Madam Chair, do you believe that this bill should apply to private schools?
Well, I don't know of any instance where they're trying to put illegal aliens into private schools. We're dealing with taxpayer dollars here.
Got it. So just to ask you the question again, I get maybe misunderstood the question. Do you think this should apply to private schools? Let me give you some context. One of your colleagues, Representative Balatakis, I believe, has filed an amendment that would make this bill ultimately apply to private schools that receive federal funding on this legislation. I'm just curious. It's not a trick question. I'm wondering, you're the chairwoman of this committee. Do you support that amendment or do you not support it?
My understanding is that amendment was withdrawn.
So you won't answer the question as to whether or not you believe private schools should be covered under this legislation?
It's not the issue at hand.
Okay, well, it's quite ironic indeed. It is odd to me that you declined to express an opinion on that. You could simply say, I don't think that it should apply to private schools. You might have a rationale for that, or you could say, I think it should, but an amendment wasn't submitted. But in any event, we'll move on to the extent that that's clearly something you don't want to answer. I think I know the reason why. How many markups has your committee held in the last 6 months? We're getting close to the August recess here, another 10 days or so, or I guess 8 days.
Sorry, I don't know exactly how many. We've held a lot.
You've held a lot?
I can get you the number.
Your team is here. I mean, is it more than 5, more than 10? I mean, it can't be.
I don't know exactly how many.
I think they're trying to get your attention here. I think they have a number they can give to you.
5.
5. That doesn't sound like a lot, but 5. Okay, so 5 markups. I was expecting you to say 50 or 100 or 25 or 10, but okay, 5.
Well, we've had a lot of hearings.
I'm sure you have. Of the 5 markups, any bills on teacher pay that you've marked up?
No, because the federal government is not involved in that issue. It's not the role of the federal government to be involved with teacher pay.
Not the role of the federal government to be involved in teacher pay. Okay, good to know. Have you had any markups on student safety, school shootings, hardening schools, taking actions to better protect our students in light of growing violence?
We have not had a markup.
No markups on that. Any markups on extending learning time for students that are struggling with learning loss following the pandemic? As you've noted, a lot of students ultimately fell behind as a result of the pandemic. I wonder if any bills around.
No markup on that.
No markups on that. So, and any markups on school meals, issues around school meals? Obviously, hunger in schools, kind of an issue that you might have heard of. I know you're familiar with it. I'm just curious if there's been a markup on that.
No, but there will be. We will be working on it.
I'm glad to hear that. I hope that can be scheduled soon because it's a pressing issue in my district and in Colorado. Look, the reason I asked this question, Madam Chair, and I think you've answered it for me, 8 months under Republican control of the House, no markups on school safety, no markups on teacher pay, no markups on hunger in schools, no markups on trying to address learning gaps as a result of the pandemic. Apparently, on the notion of teacher pay, according to the chairwoman, completely impermissible for this committee to hold a hearing on that. That isn't a matter for the federal government to be concerned with. But telling local school districts back in North Carolina or in Virginia or in Colorado what to do with their buildings, somehow that is a matter of province, of federal jurisdiction. But the issue around paying teachers is not? Is that the argument that I guess you're making today? I'm trying to understand how those two things can both be true. That the Education Committee should have no role in teacher pay, but should tell every school district in the United States of America what they can and cannot do with their buildings. Is that the committee's position?
Right now, we have a crisis at our border, as we're told by everyone, and we have the possibility of illegal aliens being housed in buildings, mostly adults, where very close to where children might be. You could consider that a school safety issue, and we do consider it a school safety issue. So you might want to look at it that way. So yes, we're dealing with school safety. If you have adult males in close proximity. We have no idea who they are, what their backgrounds are. You could consider that a school safety.
Ms. Foxx, you heard the question. That wasn't the question. The question was, is it the committee's position that the federal government has no role to play with respect to teacher pay and has every role to play with respect to telling these school districts and schools what they can and cannot do with their facilities? And it sounds like the answer is yes. And if the answer is yes, you can say yes. I don't, that can be your position.
We do not have a role to play in teacher pay. That is not our role. We have a role into considering about school safety, which is saying we have not. And this is a school
I think the American public would be mighty frustrated were they to realize the ways in which the Republicans in Congress have constricted the committee's jurisdiction so that the Education Committee is no longer a place that can hold hearings and inquiries as to how to help ensure that public school teachers can afford to live in the communities that they call home, as Ranking Member Scott did in the last Congress, holding a markup on that very subject, or enabling the committee to hear about student hunger so that students are actually fed and don't go hungry, or taking steps, by the way, bipartisan steps, to try to protect our schools in light of the growing threat of violence in terms of school shootings. Apparently, all of that is off the table for this Education Committee. And instead, we get bills like this one. And I think it's deeply disappointing. I suspect the American people will feel the same way. I also find it deeply ironic that the same group of my colleagues, and not all of them, but many of them, who bemoan any role for the federal government in education policy, who disclaim any ability for the Secretary of Education to have a role in secondary schools, to now say that there's an exception and that this is it. Did you vote, Madam Chair? There was an amendment, you probably recall this, about a month ago. I think it was a month ago. Time has flown by here the last couple of months. To abolish the Department of Education. I think it was to terminate the Department of Education. Did you vote for that amendment?
I'm sorry, I don't remember that amendment.
There was an amendment during a bill that you brought before this committee regarding sports in Title IX. And the amendment to that bill was brought by a gentleman on this committee, Mr. Massey. He's not here to defend the propriety of his amendment, but there are other colleagues of his who are here who co-sponsored that amendment. I believe 164 Republicans voted for it, and I'm wondering if you were among them.
I don't know, but I would, if the Lord put me in charge, I would get the federal government out of education in a heartbeat, because it's not delineated.
This seems like an awfully odd way to do that, Ms. Foxx. Madam Chair, with all respect, that's what I'm saying. You did vote. My understanding is you voted for this amendment to terminate the Department of Education. That's consistent with what you just said in terms of, if you had your ability to do that, you'd abolish it. And if that's the case, I'm not sure why you keep bringing bills to this committee to give the Department of Education and the Secretary of Education more powers over local schools in North Carolina and every other state in the country. It is an odd way to remove the federal government from education policy, but that's your prerogative as chair, and I'm not going to get in your way. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back the balance of my time.